Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here today to bring you another installment in my Audiobooks for the Win series. And today I'm going to be interviewing the CEO and founder of Ebooks Services, which is an indie audiobook production company that primarily focuses on helping indie authors produce high quality audios. But I hope you guys enjoy this video, and let's kick it back to Past Charles. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here to bring a really special interview for you guys. Today, I have the one, the only, the audiobook GOAT. We have Antoine from AB and Book Services. Sorry if I messed up that intro. It's been a long time since I've done an intro, but I know for a lot of you guys listening to audiobooks, you're wondering, hey, where do these audiobooks come from? And this is a great production company that we're here talking about today. So how are you doing, Antoine?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I can't complain. Have a lot of audiobooks in my life, and all is good.
I will say though, I do have a broken hand at the at the moment. So audiobook editing has been pretty tough for like the past couple of weeks because it's just been one-handed sort of the audiobook editing.
And so, is this why I'm still waiting on the audiobook for Assassin by Shira Lynn?
Yeah, that actually it's funny you mentioned that. That literally just got done 30 minutes ago. Like it just got approved by the author 30
Really?
minutes ago. Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, definitely. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit and ask you a little about yourself. So I know that you were an author. So what kind of led you into the audiobook production space and creating your own audiobook production company?
So it started with, yeah, like you were saying, my own publishing works. I actually had done audiobooks as like a fan fiction exercise years prior to doing it now professionally in
Mhm.
2019 is when I started. But looking back to my YouTube channel, because I'm actually my first thing, I guess, would be YouTube. Like I am still a YouTuber, primarily these days, Avatar: The Last Airbender. But I used to do
Good
Star
show.
Wars as well and Harry Potter on the channel. So I had made some fan fiction of a Star Wars. I made fan fiction of a fan film from a YouTuber who I just really enjoyed their fan film. So I was like, oh hey, is it okay if I like adapt this as a short story? They're like, yeah, and I was like, I like my short story. Is it okay if I adapt this as an audiobook? And they're like, of course, you know. And I grew up mostly in high school, university, listening to Star Wars audiobooks. Like I didn't really listen to any other audiobooks except for the Star Wars ones, which have this big production behind it because you have,
Mhm.
John Williams music and you have lightsabers and blasters and spaceships that can be inserted into that. So I actually thought audiobooks were supposed to always be like that. So when I started like listening to other audio that was just like clean narration, I was like, wait, are they supposed to be like Star Wars? Like, where's the sound effects? Where's it? And I was like, oh, those are audio dramas, but then realizing later that actually what Star Wars was doing for a lot of their productions wasn't actually an
Mhm.
audio drama. It was just a single narrator, but they just had all the theatrics of the sound effects and music, which I thought was pretty cool. So I did that, and I did another one for Harry Potter. Then I started publishing my own works, mostly off the back of wanting to see more, not necessarily see more African fantasy, because at that time when I did do the research, I was getting into Nnedi Okorafor and N.K. Jemisin, and Tomi Adeyemi was coming out at that time with Children of Blood and Bone, but they weren't stories that I was exactly looking for. So then I wrote my own and I started publishing, and then it just was a natural thing for me to just do audio because I was like, oh well, it's this. I went to university for multimedia, and I'd studied the craft, via my YouTube channel and all the production that went there. And I was like, oh, it should be easier because it's just audio. I'm not doing like video and graphics and stuff like that. And then I can started doing that. So for my first book, I just did an audio. I did that for my second book, and then I did a collaboration with another author. It was a co-authorship, a novella that we did called Stone Skin, fantasy work. And in doing that, I did the same process. I like basically I used my audiobook as like the last final proofread with the narrator, and I put that out. And then he was like, "Oh man, this is like really good. Like, who did your audio?" And I was like, "Oh, I did. I just have a booth. I used to work at retail in Los Angeles, and so if you work retail Los Angeles, you're gonna meet a lot of actors." I was like, "Hey, old actor or old coworkers, you want to come in to my booth and like record some stuff with me?" And he's like, "Hey, man, you should probably be doing this as a service for other indies." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think people are gonna like want to like pay for me doing this." And oh, so wrong I was. I did it. I think at first I had like a romance author, and then she went out to like three other romance author friends she knew because she loved how much our production came out and like our affordable rates, and she just blasted out to the world, and that that gets bigger and bigger, so much so that even one day because I'll take emails in now and then from people who are just looking for audio. I got what I thought was a client looking for new audio, and then halfway through our Zoom call, he's like, "Oh, and by the way, I work for Macmillan Audio," and I was like, "Wait, time out. You mean like
Wait, what?
Macmillan who published Children of Blood and Bone?" Oh, he's like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Oh my god, thank you for not telling me that until this point, because I would have freaked out the entire interview." So now one of our our biggest clients is Macmillan Audio. We do children's books and novels for them, and we've been doing that since I want to say beginning of 2020. Yeah, is when that happened. And yeah, and now we're just we do everything now. We do young adult, we do children, we do nonfiction, thriller, suspense, all of that.
And that's amazing. And I think for us as readers, there's a little bit of mystery in how the audiobook production companies are kind of set up. First, like most people know Audible and like Audible exclusive audiobooks. So like where does your company and like Tantor as well are some of the bigger ones in this space? So like where does your company kind of fit within that niche?
Yeah, no, for sure. So we
Mhm.
don't work in the same spaces as those companies, though with them and under them in other ways too. So the way it works is that we are an indie house that only produces your audio. We do not manage your files at all. We don't upload for you. Although I have recently started doing like consultations for authors who are just unsure and it's the first times, and I'll like do a Zoom call with them. I'll show how to upload to all the respective audiobook platforms. But our job is really just to do the work of the audio production itself. And then once that's done, we send those final MP3s to the client and they can choose to do whatever they want with it. I know recently we had a client who is very much into direct sales. So he has a website and I was like, oh yeah, you can just, upload it directly to your website and sell the MP3s. Or, I told him you have the option to go to a place called ACX, which is the Audiobook Creation Exchange. That's where a lot of indie authors and indie narrators go to either facilitate partnerships between narrators and authors to get those produced, and then those get uploaded to Audible and I believe Ebooks. Those are the only two platforms you can go to when you're going through ACX. Versus another platform which is called Find Away Voices, which is the one I go with, which is a wide distributor that goes to Audible, Apple Books, Kobo, Barnes and Noble's Nook, which I don't think they call it Nook anymore. I think it's just called Barnes and Noble's now, and all the other libraries, most importantly, Libby or Overdrive. So yeah, we just get those files out, and then it's up to the client, the publisher. If we're working with Macmillan, I just give them the files, and they do it because they do a whole separate thing too, where they upload
Mhm.
direct to Audible, if I'm not mistaken, and they have like different rules, and that's why sometimes you can see pre-orders for audiobooks from traditional publishers because they have like a direct partnership and relationship with some of these platforms versus like indies. We don't really have the opportunity of having pre-orders, but I hope that changes in the near future, that we can have.
Mhm.
It seems really simple to me, but then again, I'm not like a tech guy who knows how the coding works. I'm like, it seems like you can do like we have it for ebooks and we have it for paperbacks. Why can't we do it for audiobooks so we can have everything come
Mhm.
out at the same time? But but yeah, for us at AB Book Services, we just do the work of the actual production, and then that gets sent away.
Oh, that's amazing. And do you find that more indie authors are preferring that method? Because I know in the space there's proliferation of like smaller boutique audiobook production houses. I was wondering is the indie community really responding well?
Yeah, especially the romance genre, and the reason for that isn't just because of it being romance necessarily, but it's because romance novels generally have two POVs. You have the two lovers, so oftentimes, if you're having a heterosexual relationship, you're having one male narrator, one female narrator. And ACX, which is what I described before, was like the place where most indies go to find narrators, does not facilitate dual narrated projects. You only can hire out one narrator at a time and then, figure out how they get the second one in there. So yeah, a lot of these, like you were saying, these small indie houses, I feel like we get into there because we can manage both, or we'll have our own like internal talent that, can work together. For instance, Ore Nash, which is one of our top narrators, and John Joseph Rogers, another top narrator that we have, do things all the time together, and particularly in the niche of interracial romance. They have so much work that they do, and it's easier to work through a company like ours than some of these other platforms because it's focused on single narrators for some of those other places. Same with audio drama, like I mentioned at the start. Audio drama is a one that you would need to kind of hire out for. You can't really do that at some of these current platforms that are up.
And that's amazing. I was like looking at your library of like books and just like in general from like the smaller indie audiobook production houses, and there's so many new voices, especially minority voices like Amory Avant.
Tomas in particular,
Uh,
she's very much into representation of all kinds of people, not just like racially. I mean, most of their work is surrounded by Black women as like the forefront, but not just Black women being Black women, but also like disabilities. I think we just had one recently where the character was hard of hearing, or just different, backgrounds that yeah, you get a lot more diversity, not just in like the skin tone and that sort of thing, but also just lifestyles.
Yeah, and two, one of the things I was really kind of interested in talking about is like you're kind of disrupting a little bit the Audible model because I feel like a lot of times in the past couple of years, you usually had to go to like to the Tantor or the ACX platform to produce your audiobooks. Now you can essentially go to your company, produce your audio files, and do whatever you want with them,
And have
which is
yeah, have full control.
amazing.
Yeah, just full control of it. Because yeah, a lot of times, with ACX that you get locked into like I think it's a 7-year exclusivity, which there's a benefit to that if you feel like you will be on that platform for that amount of time. You do get a larger cut, but at the expense of not being able to go out to, these other wider platforms. And both methods I think are valid, but it just depends on you. But like we were saying, like the dual narration or audio, or if you want more than, one or two, three narrators, you do have to kind of go outside of that.
Yeah, I was curious too. Do you find a lot of your clients doing the direct to sale option? I know you mentioned that a little bit, but I feel like you're starting to see that more and more of like audiobooks going wider instead of just being Audible. I was wondering, have you seen that similar trend with your clients as well, not always
I've
going through
seen that with the
ACX?
non-romance clients. When it comes to romance, you really want to be like on Audible exclusivity, ebook and audio, because that's just like where those readers are. But yeah, for those like the one I just had recently, he is a African fantasy author, and very very like militant and aggressive in his wanting to be indie. Um, and yeah, that was like one of his primary things. He's like, I just want to make sure that I can like sell direct. I'm like, by all means, like all we do, we send you the files and it's up to you. We do not, and that's kind of like the mantra of AV Book Services. It's just giving indies options. Because a lot of times you'll see like these huge PFH rates, which stands for per finished hour rates. And then it'd be like $300, $400, but you don't really know like what's going into that. So what we do is like a la carte system where we break everything out. So for a big thing, a really big example is proofing. Typically, indies want to do their own proofing because they want to listen to their own baby, as it's being produced.
Mhm.
We don't need to charge for that if we know that they're going to be doing the proofing. So we're able to be flexible enough to be like, oh, hey, we'll take that out of the rate. If you want to take that on yourself, if you want to do artificial intelligence proofing, which we have available to people as well, they can do that. If you want to add sound effects, you can add that. Different narrator options and all their different rates. We are very malleable in how we work with each individual client, and we tailor it to what they specifically need.
Oh, that's amazing. And two, I think I'm still like learning about the audiobook space. So like what if like take for example an author comes to you with an audiobook. I know there's like different ways that I've seen like some companies like you can sell your rights if I'm not mistaken, or you can pay for the services. So like could you break that down a little bit and how AB Books functions as well in that space?
Yeah, so we are just freelancers, so we do not take
Mhm,
any kind of rights. Although, I mean, well, again, flexibility. So sometimes we
mhm,
will do like royalty splitting and that sort of a thing. Like for example, we just had another fantasy author who wanted to do or wanted to do a royalty split so that we weren't paid anything up front, but we do get we had a contract of getting royalties on the back end. That's generally not what we do. Like we only did it for this
mhm,
client in particular because I worked with this publisher before as an author, but I knew that I could trust them in terms of doing that. But I have had clients or potential clients who have reached out wanting that option, and if I don't really have that relationship with that book series, or I don't see that book series has a backing, then it's not really a good deal to spend all that time producing, because producing audiobooks takes quite a bit of time. As an example, standard book is about 80,000 words. That's going to be around 8 hours of finished audio. For a narrator, that would take them 16 hours to complete, and then for an editor, that's going to take about 24 hours to complete. So, like all told, that's like an entire week. And the thing is that we're indie here, and we work with a lot of indies. A lot of times, we have people who are just part-time narrators, not people who are doing this full time. So you see that 40 hours, and you're like, okay, cool, you can get that in a week. But it's like, well, they only can do this on weekends, so it might take like 2 or 3 weeks. So to spend all that time and then potentially, send it out to a client whose product might not sell, it's not a very good bet to go that route. And it is something that you do see on places like ACX and even Find a Way Voices, where they have options of. I think ACX has an option where it's a royalty share where you don't pay anything to the narrator up front. But again, even people on ACX, the narrators on ACX, they're going to be looking at your book and saying, okay, let's see how their ebook sales are, how's their print sales, before they even agree to something like that. Or they might be newer and just want to get credits under their belt. Find a Way Voices does it a little bit differently, where you pay, I think, like half of what the narrator's rate is, and then the rest is royalty share. So there are options like that. And yeah, we have done that in the past, but generally, like our mainstay is just a flat rate freelance, type deal versus any kind of royalty splitting on the back end. No rights. We don't take any rights whatsoever at all. We're not interested in that, at least at this time. Like, we're not like an audio publisher like a Podium. Podium is one that has gotten really popular, especially in the lit RPG subgenre, where they have moved. Not only are they moving into audiobooks, where they actually just they reach out to authors and then they just take over everything. Like the authors don't really get a say. So the difference between like a Podium and say AV Book Services is that Podium will take your manuscript and basically be a publisher. Like an audiobook publisher they'll make the choice of the narrator they're going to choose if they're how it's going to come out, where it's going to go, and then the authors get a split on the back end. Versus us, it's us working directly with the author, like to the point where they'll give us pronunciation guides, they'll give us feedback on like the documents as we send in files, things like that. But that we don't take anything on the back end. But yeah, there's so many options. It's a big world of audio out there.
Have you seen like a similar uptick in demand as well with the amount of manuscripts, or is it just continually growing?
Yeah, it's just continually growing based on like referrals and things like that. But yeah, 2020 definitely was the big like blowout. Like that's when I actually went full time with audio, was at the end of 2020. I want to say October 2020 or something like that, or am I mixing up my years? It actually might be in 2021 that I actually went full time.
Oh, that's
Because I forget we're in
amazing.
2022 right now, right?
Yeah, we're in
Like,
20.
I kind of forget what
It's
year.
okay. The pandemic brain is like, where have
Yeah,
all
I
the
know.
years gone? It feels like it's 2021, but then I look and it's 2022. I'm
Oh
like, wait,
goodness.
what? Yeah, and now to switch gears a little bit, I'm really curious, like, what is your audiobook process? I feel like for a lot of audiobook listeners, we don't really know what goes into the audiobook process. So can you walk us through when an author like hands you the manuscript, and then what kind of steps do you take after that? Do you
Yeah,
like already have the narrators picked, or like what's that process look like?
I'll send you through the entire thing that we go through. So, first up, usually, let's say it's a new client. We'll do an example of a new client. They usually will reach out to us either from a referral from another author, which, by the way, any referrals, we give 10% discounts to any authors. Also, any new clients that we have, we do a 10% discount on engineering services. They'll reach out usually through email, and then they'll say, what's this about? And then usually I like to do a Zoom call because I think that's the easiest way to get the information across. Also, just to get them to know who's behind, their babies, and not just words on a screen. And we'll have a conversation. Usually after that conversation, I'll ask them to send me a sample, a one-page sample from their book, usually something that has enough prose and dialogue from their significant characters, so that when I reach out to the narrators, I say, hey, we have an open audition for a new client or a returning client. Here is a one-page sample. Please send me back your auditions as soon as you can. Usually I give them about a week. And then in the next week, I send all those files to the potential client. They pick what narrators they want. Or a lot of the reason why I built out my roster so much is because a client didn't have someone that they wanted to go with. So then I just say, oh, okay, well, I'll just do an open audition outside of my current talent pool. And that's how I, have expanded my roster is because of those times where I just needed another narrator that just wasn't there. Um, so at that point, they choose their narrators. They'll give me their final manuscript. I will format it a little bit so that it's a little bit easier for the narrators to read. Send that out to the narrators. They spend the time going through the prep work. So sometimes they'll read the whole manuscript to know like which characters are what. Sometimes we'll ask for a pronunciation guide, particularly for fantasy. Like if you're fantasy, we definitely will, or science fiction, we need some pronunciation guides for some of those made up words. And then so the narrators will have it, and they'll send me their raw files. Then I edit it together, make sure it's mastered properly, make sure the editing and the pacing is right. Master that, and then I upload that either to my website or to a place called positron.com, which is the AI proofing that I was alluding to earlier. The client, if they chose to do their own proofing, will go through that entire thing. They'll leave notes either on Google Doc or Positron. And then we'll do pickups with the narrators if there is needed pickups. And then we send those files out to the client, to which it's up to them if they're going to be uploading it to Findaway Voices or ACX or direct to their website or whatever that might be.
And how does your process? I know, specifically with romance, I could get a mix up. I think it's duet, where like
Oh
they're
yeah.
both
Oh, so
in
there
each
are.
other's
I'm glad you
chapters.
brought
Like,
that
how does
up.
that change the
Yeah.
process?
So there are 3 major types of audiobooks. The one that's most common that most people are familiar with is single narration. That's Harry Potter. You have one narrator who's going throughout doing all the voices, all the prose, all the dialogue. And then we have dual narration, which that is when you have multiple POVs in a book. Each POV is taken over by a different narrator. But that same narrator, even if it is like a romance, and even if the other character does show up in that scene, that same narrator will still emulate that character's voice. So if it's a female character, but then the male one shows up in that same scene, the female will still do a male voice for that. Then we have duet. I'm sorry, no, that's not 3. There's 4. But here's the third one. The third one is duet, and what that one is when you're starting to kind of delve into like the audio drama kind of thing, because that's when you have a live session with 2 narrators going at the same time, in which case, for instance, if we're going to continue with the romance example, the male narrator does all the male parts in the book, whether it's prose or dialogue. Female does all the female parts, whether it's prose or dialogue, and they usually record that in sync. You can do the option of having them record separately and then having an editor stitch that together, but I always advise to have them record at the same time because you just get better performances because they're actually acting off of each other. And I know a lot of actors prefer that as well because they feed off of the performance of whoever's their counterpart. And you just get better product, I think, from that if you do that way. But it is possible to do it separately and stitch it together. And then, of course, you have the big boy, and that is audio drama. And that's when basically every single piece of dialogue is done by a different person. So the narrator is just one person who does all the narration, but every single character has a different person doing that, and that's something more similar to what you see with like voice acting for an anime or cartoon or something like that, or a Pixar movie, that sort of a thing. Very much more similar to that, including the production of music and sound effects and all that jazz. But something that, again, love that we're this way is that we're so flexible. A lot of times, indies, and it's very costly because you're paying all those actors all that money. One way that we've kind of gotten around that for our clients is, and what we just did actually for Love and War and for Assassin, is to have just 2 narrators do all the voices for the female male parts. And you still have that sort of audio drama business, especially you have really talented narrators who can do multiple voices and sound like different people. Then you don't have to hire, like 10, 20, 30 actors. You can just hire 2 who can do multiple, and then still add in the sound effects and music and all that jazz.
And does that, especially those latter 2 options, do those add like additional amount of time that it would normally take you to complete an audiobook because of
Yes, for sure.
scheduling?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, for scheduling for one thing, but also for the editing as well. Because if you are doing a sync process, you have to sync that up. You have to make sure everything, because sometimes they'll slip out of sync, and then you have to edit that in properly. Um, and then of course they add it if you're doing the full audio drama sort of a thing. Then yeah, there's the added sound effects and music. Usually, the thing with sound effects and music is really just finding the proper sound effects and
Mhm.
music. That's like the thing that takes up the most time. The editing takes time too as well, especially if you need to mix it so that it's not louder than the dialogue and stuff like that. But yes, it does take extra time. So single and dual narration take about the same time because it's basically the same process. Even if you're doing dual narration, because really it's really single narration. It's just that each chapter is taken over by a different narrator. But yeah, once you get into duet and audio drama, then yes, there is added time because of the syncing and all that stuff.
And I'm curious, from your own opinion, have you seen an uptick in one of the four different types that are becoming more and more popular? I feel like for me at least, duet is like I thought I was like cool with dual narration, but now I'm like and now I want all my audiobooks duet and full cast.
I would
Or like
love it
audio
if we
dramas as
had more
well.
duet. Yes. I haven't seen an uptick with duet for us personally. I would love to have more duet. I think we literally only have maybe 3 clients total that do duet. And the rest are single and dual. And because they're less costly. Once you get to the duet and drama realm, it does go up in price quite a bit because at that point you're paying hourly versus per finished hour. And of course, anything that's going to be hourly is going to be more pricey than if you're just paying whatever the rate at the end is. And then to explain that, so in the audiobook world, you'll see a lot PFH and per finished hour spoken about. I mean, what that generally means is, like I was saying before, if you have like an 8-hour audiobook, you're charged based on the finished audio. So that 8 hours, whatever the narrator's rate might be like 150, 200, then you just multiply that by the 8, and that's the final rate. But if you're doing duet and audio drama, you can't really do that because you have multiple people. There's just so much moving around that it just doesn't make sense to do that. So you have to pay hourly for that sort of a thing, and then that can get more costly because you're paying for those actors' booth time in the booth and their prep time too to prep that work. So yeah, I would like to see more duet and drama. We like that. Like that's my favorite kind to do, but it's definitely more costly to do that.
Because I feel like now I'm more like a narrator aligned, like audiobook reader versus author. So if I
Yeah,
see
no, that's
narrators that
true.
I like, and I don't know if you see that a lot too, like
Oh, yes,
in
very much.
like
That's
how
actually
people go for.
huge. Oh, that's huge in the audiobook. I know, in particular for the lit RPG genre, a lot of those authors will advise to just go for those big names because that's the only way you're gonna get people to even, give your book a time of day, is to have one of those, well-known names. Even if you have to pay extra for those people, they say it's worth it, to do it. So that's yeah. There's a huge portion of the audiobook world which is just dedicated listeners, not necessarily readers or people who are like looking for stories, but like listeners of a specific narrator, like the people who just like, oh, that person narrated that book. I don't care what the book's about. I just want them because they're such a good reader.
And
Same
I
thing like
am
movie
guilty
stars.
of
It's like
that.
movie stars. It's like movie stars, right? Like where
Mhm.
you're like, oh, Tom Cruise, Will Smith's in that movie. I'm going to see it. I don't care what the movie's about. It's like that, but in the audiobook world.
And do you find more listeners, especially and authors too as well, are looking for more diverse books? I mean, sorry, more diverse narrators
Oh my
when they
god, yes,
want
that's
to bring their
actually
books to life.
funny. It's like you meant to segue this or something like that. But that's actually how we found one of our more recent narrators. His name is Tony Aiden Vo. And he is a Vietnamese American. And there was a romance author who had black female and then I believe a Vietnamese character. I'm not sure yet because we haven't actually started that project yet because I literally just got this guy for that reason. And then they were like, yeah, I was like hoping we could get a narrator, with the same background. And I was like, oh man, I actually don't have like any Vietnamese Americans. And then I went and looked and I had a very hard time finding it. And it was actually the author who I think reached out to another author friend who had hired him. And then I reached out to him, had a Zoom call and everything, and then got him on the roster. So now we have him. And that's just how it's been expanding. Literally, like I said, it's just been a need. If we need it, then we put him on. And then now we have like, all these choices.
That's amazing because I feel like now that we're getting more diverse, especially from the indie side, more diverse voices, it's really cool that you're like adding those narrators to your roster so like we can hear more like authenticity when we're listening to these stories.
Okay, this is a really good example right now because I just got
Yeah.
an email like just now from a potential new client. I'm gonna not say her name, just for her own privacy because I don't know how much she wants to have it. But here, like just so you have an example of how like it starts, right? So I have a subject line, form submission, new form, AB Book Services, audiobook inquiry. Hi, I'm author name, a fantasy author. Though I've recorded and released my own audiobooks in the past, I'm looking to work with a professional this time and want to hire a single narrator for an upcoming release. I love to work with book studios, and I am very interested in getting more details about your process, rates, etc. I have a few narrators in mind: Jake McAskill, Martin Martinez, and Tony Vo. And this works because on my website I have all the narrators' reels and stuff, so you can kind of get an idea of everything. The continuing reading, it says, and I'd love to know more about how they work and their rates for a project such as mine. And I'm not going to get into like the subject of her because that might give away like who this author might be. And then I'm happy to chat more via email or phone. Please let me know your availability to discuss, and I hope to speak with you soon. So then what I would do right after we get done with this conversation is I would respond to her, probably put her in touch with my assistant, who will schedule a Zoom with her sometime in the next week or so, so we can figure out like what's the best process. I'll probably ask her a little bit about like her background, what kinds of books she writes. It seems like it's fantasy, but what she looks for in an audiobook. Does she listen to audiobooks? Sometimes you have a client who doesn't listen to audiobooks, and doesn't even know like that landscape because they're like, yeah, no, I like prefer reading. I don't like listening, that sort of a thing. And then then you just go from there. But it happens just like that. Like I just got an email, I've never met that person, and now I might have a working relationship with that author going forward.
Oh, that's amazing. If it was a romance author, I'd be like, "Give me the details. Just
No,
give me tropes.
it's
Just give me
fantasy,
cover themes. I can find
which
it. I can
which
I
is
I can figure it out."
which is funny that you say that because yeah, romance definitely that's the most prolific clients that we have because they just write so fast and so nuts.
Yeah.
Um, but fantasy definitely is my whenever I get fantasy working, I like go head over heels for like, yes, what do you want? Like I'll do anything. Like, like because that is like my genre. That's what I love the most. But yeah, you can't gotta the reason why I am full time now is because of those romance authors.
Also, I'm really curious because I wonder if you could speak to this because as an author and as an audiobook producer, I was curious, do audiobooks tend to earn more in the long term or at least make their money
Yes.
back a lot quicker than ebooks and
Not
paperback?
quick. Well, it really depends on the quicker part. In terms of earning more, yes, very much so. And the whole thing about the reason why it's difficult sometimes to even like run ads for ebooks or paperback is that the return is a lot harder. But with audio, you're selling them like $25 a pop, that kind of thing. So it's a lot easier, especially if it's a digital file. All you're doing is submitting a digital file. The return is much greater, so you can actually spend more on ad revenue, or you can spend more of your ad dollars on ads, because there's a bigger profit margin with audiobooks. Now, in terms of them selling more and faster, again, that depends on if the initial story is doing well. However, that's the case for every genre except for lit RPG. And by the way, if anyone who's not familiar with lit RPG, lit RPG stands for literature role playing game book, basically. So it's like basically reading a video game in most cases. That's the one genre that audiobooks do better than print and ebook consistently. Not like I'm gonna give you an example right now. Not like a marginally better, you kind of should do. No, it's like if you're doing lit RPG, it is an absolute must. Some people even do audiobook first for lit RPG, versus uh, 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 doing typical ebook first or
Mhm.
paperback. Like some people do audio first and then later. So okay, example: Dungeon Crawler Carl is one of the most popular lit RPG game lit adventure books right now on Amazon. 2.5 thousand views. I'm not views. Ratings. If you go to
Mhm.
Audible and you actually look up 2.5, so keep that in mind. They have 2.5 on Amazon, so that's their ebook, hardback kind of stuff. But if you go to Audible, Dungeon. Do you want to make a guess on how many reviews they have on 5.5 thousand. So it's twice as much as what you had
Wow.
on Amazon. He Who Fights with Monsters, another lit RPG adventure. 14,000 reviews on Audible. On Amazon, hold on, He Who Fights with Monsters, Amazon, 4,000 reviews. That's even a bigger gap. 4,000 reviews on Amazon,
Goodness.
14,000 on Audible. So yeah, if you're doing lit RPG, audio is a complete
Mhm.
must, absolute must.
And this may be a harder question, but are there any upcoming projects that you have either like that are almost done or that you're currently working on that you really want to share and put on people's radar? if you can.
Well, I'll do me first because just I'm gonna toot my own horn. But starting next month is when T.J. Young and the Orishas Book 2 is going into production with our narrator Nakia Renee Martin, who got so much great love for her work on the first book. That one's coming up in next month. Right now we have, like I was just saying before, we just had Asa SN Assassin just got done an hour ago, right before we started this recording. We also have another romance, Princess of Zamibia by Delaney Diamond, that is coming out soon. The Jade Obelisk, which is a historical African fantasy that's coming out by MV Media. That's coming out. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but that one's currently in revision right now. Thank You, Mommy. I love children's books. Like sometimes you need a little break from the erotica and the romance, and going into children's books is like a really good palate cleanser.
It's a really great 180.
It really is. Yeah, for sure. We have one of those in revision right now too, and then we have a few others. We have like some fantasy coming up, some more romance, epic fantasy, middle grade fantasy. We have a military fantasy that's coming up too. Quite a bit, quite a few. But yeah. Oh, we have a zombie. Our first zombie one is coming up. And what I'm anyone who's listening, any authors are listening right now, we are looking for male or female romance books. Please send them our way. I'm in talks with a few authors who are thinking about doing it, but they haven't pulled the trigger quite yet. But we really would love some LGBT representation on our roster and our portfolio. And I'm just interested in that too, because a lot of times with these audio books, I'm getting to read and listen to these books, so I actually get to I can dive into this world for just a little bit, without actually like diving all the way in by working on it. So I'm also just interested in that as well. But yes, a lot of stuff down the pipeline we got coming.
And this may be a harder question. Are there any audiobooks that you guys have produced that are already out there that you would recommend for someone who wants to check out some of your narrators or some of your more popular titles?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you want to do it at your leisure, because we do so many different genres, you can always go to AntoineBandalay.com/AB Book Services. And there you'll see a page that details our entire portfolio. For me, I'll say maybe for science fiction fantasy, for our fantasy, I would suggest By Sea and Sky. That one has a really nice representation of how we do sound effects interludes and how it can up your production value with very minimal effort being put into it. Then for the sci-fi, I would say Striker X by Negus Lamont is a good one. That one's more of a full audio drama with full sound effects. The main character was a Master Chief character from Halo. He had so every time he spoke, he had to speak from a HUD. That was pretty cool. Romance, I would say Love and War by Shira Lin. That one's a full audio drama. Really good. What's another one that I liked a lot? Princess of Astoria, Delaney Diamond, Melt for You, GL Tomas, all of those are really good. All those are just more regular not single, but dual narration. Oh, Until Now by Delaney Diamond is a really good spy romance sort of a thing. I actually really enjoyed doing that one. That was a fun one. Of course, in the middle grade young adult world, I would recommend my own book, T.J. Young and the Orishas. If you're into Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, it's a perfect mix between those two. But instead of it being these black boys, you have a black boy who's actually in the forefront in West African mythology in the forefront. And then children's books, literally any of the children's books that we've done, you can listen to, and I would recommend all of them. Those are so much fun. Not so much because they're wholesome and everything, but typically I'm able to do a full sound effects and music suite for those guys, and that's always fun to do, to add in. I did one about a talking fish, so I got to add these fish bubbles every now and again, or there was one about this kid going to school for the first time, so I had school buses, and when they went to the zoo, sounds of owls and wolves, and it's just those are always so fun to do, the children's books. But yes, you can totally go to my portfolio on our website. You can check it out at your leisure, with samples from each of those.
And then my fun and final question. This is a tough one. This is a very tough one. What is your preferred listening speed?
Oh, so actually this happened this year, by the way. It's because of a Facebook post. So my assistant, we're Facebook friends as well. And she had posted something about watching YouTube videos at 1.5 speed or something like that. And I was
Really?
like, what? That's weird. Why would you do that? Just wouldn't you want to watch it normal? And she's like, no, I don't got time for that. And also you start getting used to it. So I was like, all right, bet. Let's see how this works. And then I went on my YouTube video and I started increasing the speed. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, this actually like it does take a while to get used to it, but once you do, you're like going back to like regular speed. You're like, oh god, this is like tortoise speed right now. And so I started adapting that to my audiobooks now too. Like I was just going through the Will Smith memoir that he just put out, and I think I'm playing that currently at 1.25. And it also depends on the speaker too, because sometimes people naturally speak faster, so you don't want to go to like the 2 times or the 1.75. So usually I start at 1.25 now. I never am at 1 speed anymore, but typically I feel like I'm in the range of 1.5 to 1.75, but it also depends just on the reader. But yes, my default, I would say, if I want to answer, 1.5 is my default.
But thank you so much again, Antoine, for coming on my channel. It's been a pleasure talking with you. For all you guys watching this video, if you want to find all of his social media links as well as his website, I will link that all down below in the description box. I will highly recommend that you guys check out Love and War. I talked to the author on my channel. She's absolutely amazing. Her audiobook is absolutely phenomenal. Thanks to you guys. But thank you so much again, Antoine, for coming on my channel, and I'll catch you guys all with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.